So here we go. There are actually two studies that I'm going to talk about. One is about risk and one is about stigma related to STIs. So in this first study, they recruited about 600 people from online, from the volunteer section on Craigslist. And oh, thank you, Natalie. Thank you. Yes, I appreciate all the hearts that people are giving. So while I'm telling you about the study, tap the screen and listen, and then we can have a conversation. Okay. So they asked 600 people. Half of them read one scenario and the other half was randomly assigned to read another scenario. And the scenario was, okay, how many people out of 1,000 are going to die, in the first case, while driving from Chicago to Detroit, which is a 300 miles trip, versus in a car crash, versus how many, out of 1,000, how many people will die from having unprotected sex, from catching HIV and then dying of AIDS after having unprotected sex one time with someone who was a intravenous drug user. Okay, so I actually want your input on this. We're gonna vote for the numbers of people. First for the car crash, second for the, hold on, don't give me numbers because I don't know which one the numbers are for. So let's go with how many people out of 1,000 are going to die in a car crash from Detroit to Chicago, 300 miles worth of trip. Go, give me a number. 125, 200 out of 1,000, 88, 6, 2,000. Out of 1,000, I don't think you can have 2,000 people dead out of 1,000. 500, what, half of them are going to die? Come on, people, be realistic, okay? 600 are going to die out of 1,000 people. Come on, be realistic. 3, 30, 83, okay. All right, so there's a very wide range of estimates. 60, 38, 7, 10. Okay. lot of different estimates. 250 out of 1,000 would all be dead if we died that much in car crashes. Okay, people, come on. So we have this range of estimates of how many people would die out of 1,000 driving from Chicago to Detroit. Now, how many people out of 1,000 would die from AIDS after having unprotected sex once? Go. Give me numbers. 2, 3, 0, 0, 100, 0, 6, 1, 460, 0, 40, 0, 0. Wow. 25, 10. They don't know the person has it. Yes, they don't know the person. The person may not have it, actually. You just go ahead and have unprotected sex with someone. You don't know if they're HIV positive or not. You're just taking your chances. With the medication out there, nobody should die of AIDS. Yeah, I stepped away. What was the question? So the question was, how many people out of 1,000 would die of AIDS after having sex with someone, unprotected sex with someone? Okay, so we have a range of responses, wildly ranging responses from like 0 to 250. In reality, so in this study, and I prepped you a bit that we have an irrational fear of STI. So a lot of people said 0 for the HIV sort of scenario, and no one said 0 for the car crash scenario. In reality, in the study, what people, not being prepped about what the study is about, people said that let me give you the exact numbers. They thought that on average, 4 people out of 1,000 would die in a car crash, compared to 70 people out of 1,000 who would die of AIDS. So it was a huge difference in how many people thought would die of AIDS versus car crash. Yeah, isn't that crazy? 4 out of 1,000 versus 70 out of 1,000. Do you want to know what the reality is? You said 5. That is not true. People wildly overestimate the risk of both. Well, it's not the opposite. Well, actually, it is the opposite. So when you look at the risk that people thought, they thought 17 times more people would die from AIDS compared to car crash. Car crash deaths are actually 20 times more likely. It is the reverse in reality, because there are only about 1 in 300 people in the US who have HIV to begin with. HIV is actually very difficult to transmit. Only about 1 in 1,000 times you have sex with someone who's HIV positive, you are going to get HIV. 1 in 1,000 if you're having sex with unprotected sex. And then with current medications against for treating HIV, you're not, many people are not likely to die at all of AIDS. So no, 1 is not correct either. You want to know what the actual numbers are? The actual numbers, not 1 in 1,000. So 1 in a million is going to die in a car crash, and 1 in 10 million is going to die from AIDS after having unprotected sex once. No, it's not 1 in 1,000. It's 1 in a million. 1 in a million. 1 in a million people. Our ideas of risk are so incredibly inflated. Yeah, absolutely. You should still wear a seatbelt. And we're talking only about 1 trip from Chicago to Detroit. We spend a lot more time in our cars. Yes, that's HIV. Well, they didn't test for all, you can't do experiments with everything, but there is a lot of fear mongering. And granted, we overestimate risks of car crashes too. It's not just that the STI risk was, or the HIV risk was overestimated. We overestimate car crash risk, but we overestimate HIV risk so much more. Yes, things in the 70s and the 80s were very different. Having sex once unprotected is very different from having sex unprotected again and again and again and again. This is reality. This is reality. Oh, what did Julia ask? Sorry, I missed Julia's question. But I mean, we can't lie to people and tell them that the risks are more than they are. They should be aware of what the actual risks are. And what we do by lying to people is basically, stigmatizing so much more. Were the HIV risk numbers you quoted for heterosexual sex? So it was, so 1 in 1,000 chances of getting HIV by having sex with someone who's HIV positive is for vaginal sex. For anal sex is a little less. It's about 1 in, I think, 1 in 300 or something like that. Yeah, exactly. Lying will lead to no trust in real information. Do you recommend both going in for testing before intercourse? I absolutely recommend people should get tested on a regular basis. Yeah. I'm not saying don't use condoms. I'm just saying have a realistic, idea of what the risks are and how we think of how much we fear certain things. Like, do you really want to live in absolute fear? Keep away from anal. Well, anal sex is more risky for transmitting all sorts of, not all sorts, but certainly for HIV is significantly higher than the risk for transmitting it through vaginal sex. So that was study 1 that was finding this like ridiculously overestimated risk of, are you saying 1 in a million to die versus become infected? No. So 1 in a million will die. Actually, 1 in 10 million. 1 in a million is a car crash. So 1 in a million is your chance of dying in a car crash. by taking one trip from Chicago to Detroit. And 1 in 10 million is your chance of dying of AIDS by having unprotected sex once with a person whose status, HIV status, you don't know. Does that make sense? Yes, you can get STDs from oral. Yeah. Yes, you can still die. You can die anytime, any place for all sorts of reasons. So those are the realities of the numbers. But we have wildly inaccurate perceptions of risk, and our perceptions of risk are actually flipped over in how much it's, how risky it is, how risky STIs are versus, driving. You slept with 72 guys. Well, if you use the condom each time, you should be fine. Do you know what the likelihood of contracting any STI is? I don't know. But HIV is one of the harder STIs to transmit. So chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis, herpes, HPV, all of those are much easier to transmit than HIV. But HIV is the scariest for so many people because it is, or it used to be, a deadly disease, and it still is if it's not treated, if you're not on medications. If you are on medications, then it's not. Then it's a chronic disease, just like diabetes. But of that 10, you're not getting, I don't think you're getting the numbers correctly. Out of the 10 million, 60% is not infected. Of course, in 10 million people, only about the rate of infection in the US is only about 1 in 300. What do I think of Gardasil? Everyone should get it. Everyone should get vaccinated against HPV. Okay, so that's study 1. I want to tell you about study 2, which was about the stigma that is associated with, no, condoms are amazing if you can find the right fit, if you find the right condom, the right size, the right material, the right brand, the right level of lubrication and all of that, condoms can be pretty good. And it's something that you get used to, something that you learn to love. And I hope if you're having casual sex, you're using condoms. If you're having sex with long-term partners in a monogamous relationship, then by all means, go for it. No, it does not cause neuro issues in some people. I mean, the risks are incredibly low. Okay, the other study looked at stigma. So they used the same kind of methodology. They recruited a bunch of people, about 300 or 400 people from the internet. They were about age 30, and on average. And they had them read, half of them read one vignette, the other half read a different vignette, which this is what it said. The first one said, Sarah was going to a party, or, they changed the genders, but a person was going to a party, and she was going to meet a guy that she's been interested in. Before going to the party, she noticed some symptoms. But, she worried about them for a minute, but then sort of discarded that as another UTI, another urinary tract infection, which is a non-sexually transmitted disease. It's just an issue that women often have. And then she went to the party. She had unprotected sex with the guy that she was interested in, and turned out she had chlamydia, and she gave the guy chlamydia. In the other scenario, Sarah felt kind of under the weather a bit before going to the party. She dismissed her symptoms as just another bout of allergies, just another bout of allergies, went to the party, hooked up with the guy that she was interested in, and ended up giving him swine flu. It turned out to be swine flu, H1N1. So in one case, Sarah gave chlamydia. In the other case, Sarah gave swine flu. In both cases, she didn't realize she had these diseases. She thought what she had was something non-transmitted, and the person ended up getting that disease. So what they asked the people, the participants, was how selfish, how dumb, and how risky is Sarah as a person? And unconditionally, people said that, yes, so swine flu is worse. You can actually die of swine flu. You will not die from chlamydia. Chlamydia is treated by a week of antibiotics. If you keep it untreated, it may lead to long-term consequences such as infertility, but it's not, it's not going to kill you, whereas swine flu can and, does kill a lot of people. Now, in both, participants perceived this person as incredibly more selfish, risky, and dumb, this person transmitting this disease, when she transmitted chlamydia than swine flu, even though swine flu is objectively worse. Infertility is a pretty big deal, yes. However, death is even bigger deal, I would think. Now, they said, okay, maybe people are not, so the chlamydia was so much more stigmatized than swine flu. I know, it's ridiculous. And now, he's in the worst part. Then they said, yes, chlamydia is more likely to go unchecked longer. That's true. But this person, had symptoms. And so you would think they went and got it got tested. Now, they did a follow-up study to this because they said, well, maybe people don't understand the differences between chlamydia and the fact that they, the outcomes are not as potentially severe as swine flu. So they did a follow-up study where they compared a mild outcome. So they developed the story, the vignette that people read and said, okay, so Sarah went to the party, gave chlamydia to her partner, and her partner had to go to the doctor and take 1 week of antibiotics. In the other case, they said Sarah gave swine flu to the person while having sex, and that person died because of the swine flu. How selfish, dumb, and risky is Sarah? Guess what? Sarah was still rated as more selfish, more risky, and more dumb when she transmitted chlamydia to someone, that someone had to go and get a 1 week of antibiotics, than when she gave swine flu to that person and that person died from that swine flu. So, I don't know. I mean, STIs are no fun. I'm not saying, go and have unprotected sex and get all the STIs in the world, right? I'm not saying that. Please don't take me as saying that. I'm just saying we have this such strong stigma against STIs, even STIs that are not life-threatening, that are easy to treat. If you get tested on a regular basis, it's really kind of easy to, prevent them from spreading. Well, the person didn't know she had swine flu. She thought she had a bout of allergies, or that was the story that they created. It's a stigma, but it's effective to scare people into prevention. But we shouldn't be scaring people into prevention by false, and what it's also doing, instead of scaring people into prevention, is stigmatizing the people who have these diseases. Wouldn't a stigma to STIs... Exactly. So stigmatizing these diseases would make it actually more difficult psychologically for people to go and get tested and to have honest conversations about these things, right? But they weren't more evident. So in the story, in the vignette that they created, the person who had the chlamydia versus the swine flu didn't realize he had a disease that was transmissible. So in the chlamydia case, she thought she had a UTI, a urinary tract infection, which is not sexually transmitted or in any way transmitted. In the other case, in the case of swine flu, she thought she had allergies, because it can be in the early stages. You can kind of confuse it for something like allergies. So yeah. The effect of having chlamydia for a long time is infertility. Why don't doctors suggest testing? I mean, some doctors do suggest testing, but we should all get tested. And luckily, it's pretty easy to get tested. There are free clinics all over the place. It's a betrayal of trust. What trust? I mean, it's the same trust. Yes, you can get swine flu that way too. Oh, who said fuck you? Can you please say fuck you again? But you trust people to be clean of swine flu too, don't you? When they have sex with you? Yeah. So anyway, yeah, are people hooking up here through my sex science scope, sex science news scope? Oh, you blocked that guy. Sorry, I didn't see him in time. I know. I understand the mindset, but the mindset often has to do with this incredible stigma that we have, thinking that, you know, STIs are somehow worse than they are compared to other things, other diseases. Well, of course, if your penis starts changing in, you know, in color or appearance, or stuff starts coming out of there, then obviously you go to the doctor and get checked out. How about just being actually clean, take a shower, shave? Yes, people are doing. Okay, so that's my sex science news today. For those of you who may have joined late, here's a brief recap. So a study found, there were two studies, and in the first one they found that people think it's so much more likely to die of AIDS after having unprotected sex once with a person than it is to die in a car crash on a drive from Chicago to Detroit, which is not true. It's actually the opposite. It's about 20 times more likely that you'll die in a car crash in that scenario than die of AIDS. Yeah, people don't understand stats. People are terrible at understanding stats and understanding risk. In the second study, they found that a person unknowingly transmitting chlamydia to someone that resulted in the partner needing to take antibiotics for 1 week was perceived so much more negatively than a person transmitting swine flu while having sex with that person, leading to death of the partner. So lots of misconceptions, lots of fear, lots of stigma around STIs that are not attached to other risky behaviors or other non sort of sexually transmitted infections.